today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Jason, Derek here.
So today is a big day. As we do this, we are a few hours away from Britney Spears' court hearing where there is going to be talk and maybe even a decision on whether Britney Spears will be forced to sit for a deposition. Her lawyer, Matt Rosengart, does not want that to happen. He has made that really clear. I think there are a couple of questions here. One is why, and the second is, does she have something relevant to say, which Jamie believes she does, that would require her to take the oath and talk?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Matt thinks this would be very, very traumatic for Britney. She made that testimony over the phone, laid out a bunch of allegations against her father, and now it seems her father wants to ask questions and press her on that.
And here's the
but
problem.
He's saying, I'm not really using that. I've got financial documents, and I don't need... Britney's irrelevant to what I'm investigating.
I think the issue of whether it's traumatic for her is utterly irrelevant.
Sure.
For a couple of reasons. One, she's out of the conservatorship. So a lot of people have trauma when they had testify in a deposition. So it's not a defense to say, oh, I'm not going to sit for a deposition because it's traumatic for me.
Right.
Period.
Right.
So
well, she hasn't initiated litigation against her father.
Well,
that's what Matt keeps saying.
But that's what I'm saying is, forget the
right.
trauma thing. It's ridiculous,
Sure.
right?
What's at issue here, and the big thing that the judge has to weigh is whether or not her testimony is likely to be relevant to the underlying proceedings. These proceedings are whether or not Jamie is going to have to pay a lot of money back or should in some way have not enriched himself at the expense of the estate all those years.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then.
Yeah.
If Matt Rosengart sticks to the money that went back and forth in the conservatorship, then I think you make the argument that Britney is irrelevant because it was Jamie's decision on how to spend the money.
Right.
If Matt Rosengart in grilling Jamie Spears gets into, did you force her to put an IUD in? Did you not allow her to take an IUD out?
Right.
Did you not allow her to get married? Did you spy on her in her bedroom? If he opens that door, how does a judge say that Jamie can't ask Britney to testify?
So it's a great question because in depositions, there's nobody there to restrain the questioner from asking the questions they want to ask. You can object to them, but there's no judge to rule on them. So typically, basically every deposition question is going to be answered. So you ask the question, Jamie's gonna sit first in his deposition. If Matt goes beyond the financial stuff and start asking about all these allegations that Britney and others have made against him about doing things like
by the way, Matt's made those allegations
and Matt's
too.
made those allegations. If he starts getting into that, all of a sudden you're going to see, assuming that Jamie loses the hearing today and is not allowed to otherwise depose her.
He goes back into court.
He goes back into court and says, hey, he has now opened the door. He's asked my client all these questions, although Matt has said he's not going to put his client up on the stand, right? Brittany's not going to take the stand at trial. But
well, again,
I think that's a big deal.
By the way, who cares? Jamie could still call her.
He could still call her, number one. And number two, the standard is not whether the person's going to be testify at trial. The standard is whether that person can offer relevant evidence to the trial itself.
So if it goes just to money, then I think you can make the argument that Britney is kind of irrelevant because he managed all her money.
And she would have no firsthand knowledge of any of it.
But if it goes beyond that to all of the allegations Britney has made, which Matt has doubled down on, I don't see how a judge can say, oh, she doesn't have to testify.
Well, the other big allegation that he's made a lot of hay over in all of the documents is the report in the New York Times about the listening devices. I'm not sure Britney is all that relevant to that. If she was surreptitiously, surveilled, there's nothing Britney can offer about that. So I see it as two buckets. I see Matt making two arguments. One, there is financial malfeasance, and two, you surveilled your own daughter by planting listening devices in the room. Now, wait a minute. If he confines it to those areas, I think you can make the argument that Britney's testimony is absolutely collateral to that and of no influence, and it would only traumatize her.
The one thing
stop on the trauma.
He is making the trauma argument. I'm telling you what
the
Matt
trauma,
is saying.
And then you need her testimony.
By the way,
fair enough.
The trauma argument is absurd.
He keeps making it. It's in every one of his filings.
Okay, I'm 6'2". Does that make it so? No, I mean I'm serious.
Well, and also if she's going to talk, if she were to talk about trauma, all of a sudden her testimony is essential. She's the only person who can talk about the personal trauma she suffered. That's why it can't be about the trauma, right? But also even on the other stuff, even on the surveilled stuff, it's important to know what she was aware of and what she wasn't, right? Surveillance is only
if the person doesn't know.
If the person doesn't know about it. So you need to test Britney's knowledge of what was going on. And I would assume there's some claims that Jamie would make.
Well,
that
Jamie is
Britney
already
was aware of this stuff.
Derek may be right to the extent Jamie has already said under oath in an affidavit
Yes,
that he had no knowledge of any surveillance and didn't do it. So to that extent, if his point is I didn't do it, maybe Britney is irrelevant to that. I mean, if he did
then it's all about his knowledge of the surveillance, this existence. And his knowledge.
He said
of
he
it.
had none.
We're right.
He's already said it.
That would be the only question.
So I don't think that opens the door for Britney to testify. But if Britney has made so many claims, and so has Matt Rosengart, that if he opens that door in a deposition with Jamie, I don't see how a judge could possibly say you can't depose Britney.
Let me ask you, what do you guys think of the argument that he is making? He is investigating
and by the
Jamie
way,
Spears.
Why is that? So I mean,
well,
why? It's like we're acting like how dare. Why is that so bad?
Because here's what I think is the optics are here. Is the conservatorship judge is Britney was dragged into court into a conservatorship, right? She is not suing her father. I think that's a big deal. I think Matt is making a lot of hay.
But we should
I'm
explain.
investigating your conduct on a thing that you initiated, a conservatorship proceeding. She is just a person who was dragged into court.
But Matt,
if she initiates a lawsuit, of course she gets deposed.
You're missing something. Nobody is saying the conservatorship shouldn't have been established in the first place. Even Matt Rosengart.
Yes. Okay.
Britney was about to die.
No. I don't dispute
and
that.
by the way, I think there were a lot of problems with the conservatorship as it went on. But at the beginning, when you look back, Britney was in peril of dying.
Yes.
And so it's not about whether the conservatorship should have been established. It's did it go on too long? Were there abuses in it?
Yes.
And those are fair questions.
Yeah. Totally.
But this is still part of the conservatorship hearing. That hasn't been closed down. This is not an independent lawsuit.
Right.
It's tying up loose ends from the conservatorship before the conservatorship judge.
Here's what for me, granting depositions it's not hard to get to depose somebody.
Right.
Judges typically will grant this. Remember, just because somebody is deposed doesn't mean the evidence you get is admissible in a proceeding. Right.
It's
fact finding. Yeah, it's discovery.
It just seems to me that Britney's knowledge of everything that happened is totally relevant, even if the specifics about the financials might ultimately not be admissible in a proceeding. He has the right to depose her.
Let me ask one more question.
Yeah.
If it's so easy, why did the judge, when she ordered the deposition of Jamie, not just say, and of course, reciprocally, I'm going to order it of Britney?
As a matter of fact, she was more sympathetic than I thought.
The reason, I think, is because she's a court of equity as well. Conservatorship judges take equity into account. They're not just civil judges.
What's fair?
Right. Equity.
Right.
What is fair?
But wait a minute. But why isn't it fair?
I think that's why he's raising all this.
Why isn't it fair?
I think he's raising things that appeal to sense of equity. Like, is it okay to subject her to this? She's a victim. He's trying to play up that this would be traumatic.
You're assuming,
which I think is an argument to an equity
judge.
You
assume a conclusion there. The question is he a villain? I mean, the judge never said, and as a matter of fact, this judge and other judges approved almost all of the things Jamie Spears did. So you cannot assume that conclusion. And and it's like, look, Matt Rosengart is acting like this is just abhorrent.
Right.
But you're right. It's fact-finding.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that when somebody is deposed. By the way, everything I'm hearing is Jamie is really torn on this because look, there are bad optics when a father deposes a daughter.
And especially the kinds of questions that might be asked.
But it doesn't seem that torn. He's fighting tooth and nail to depose his daughter in these documents.
Or leverage not to be deposed.
I would think he'd be torn.
He's torn. But the question is, if he does it, how is he going to do it? There is no way they're going on the attack. They can't. They'd get killed if they did that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just got to be asking questions.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to happen today. By the time you listen to this, there may have been a decision, but even if there's a decision, especially if the decision is she's not going to be deposed right now, you got to now wait to see what happens with Jamie, because if the door opens, Jamie's lawyer goes back into court and this thing gets revisited.
I think the judge splits the baby and says, I'll allow a deposition with these very narrow topics. I think that's where she's heading. Or else she would just say, here's a deposition. She would have said it at first. She's going to try to split the baby. That's my guess.
We'll see. Okay, Jerry Jones.
Yeah, Jerry Jones, Dallas, controversial at times. Dallas Cowboys owner made a statement yesterday, I think it was, at a press conference. And he was talking about, I guess, making fun of an assistant coach or
no, one of his old scouts passed away.
Well,
in his 80s.
right. Okay,
Yes.
and so he was talking about it, and he said he wanted to quote get me somebody a blank and use the M word, which is a pejorative term for little people, for people with dwarfism.
Yes.
To dress like Lacewell, this person who had passed away, and stand next to him at a practice.
So I think you have to hear it. You have to hear the context in which she says that.
Lace held court out here, and I've always, I'm going to get me somebody about to stand up there with me and dress him up like Lace, and think Lace is still out here helping us. Look at the practice with us.
So he's doing comedy, essentially. So he's standing at the dais, and he misses this guy Lacewell, who is an old scout that he used to stand next to on the sidelines. So he's trying to do sort of comedy, saying, I'm going to get to dress someone up who I'm going to lean on to feel comfortable, and it'll feel like old times. It's weird. It's weird because he says it so casually.
Well,
but he's not saying it maliciously. I wanted to
This
at
is
least
who
put
Jerry Jones is, right? He's a man who speaks with these kinds of words, these kinds of epithets, with frequency and with fluidity.
Yeah.
What's remarkable to me is the non-apology that he issued. Did you hear the non-apology?
No, I have not heard the non-apology.
He said, earlier today, I made a reference which I understand may have been viewed as offensive. I apologize. That is a non-apology. What he's saying is, he's not saying I apologize for using the term. He's saying I used a term that other people may find offensive. He's not saying I understand how it's offensive.
It's a sorry you're offended.
It's a sorry you're offended, and I'm going to go on with my life kind of apology. And it's remarkable to me because I get it that Jerry Jones is a very sophisticated dude, a very smart guy.
How old is he?
He's
In his
almost
80s.
80. I think he was 79.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Well, yeah, 79.
Make a difference?
Well, I don't know.
I'm only saying, the only reason I say that, look, I'm not defending it.
My mother's 79, and she would never in 10 million years use this term.
I know, but again, not everybody's your mother.
Yeah.
And thank God.
This is a 79-year-old like tycoon in Texas.
Well, I think that's
know what I mean?
But
And
Derek,
that matters.
look, and that doesn't
forgive
justify
it,
it, but it explains something, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's a very wealthy, out of touch Texan.
What about when? What about when somebody look? Okay, let's give him that. And there are terms, look, that we all can use that we're not aware. Things change, right? Terminology changes. Things you're allowed to say one day, you're not allowed to say the next. I get it. So this is not quite there. This has been verboten for a long time. But all right, so then you're informed. Hey, Derek, you just used word X. That's not appropriate in this community. Is your response, oh, I'm sorry if you were offended?
No, my response is, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Thank you for the teaching moment. I apologize. Of course, I intended no ill will.
You bend over backwards
of course.
to lay out your apology.
This is a 79-year-old billionaire.
His was, you sensitive people out there, I apologize if you happen to be offended by what I said.
I get it.
But he is. He's quite old. The thing is, the reason I wanted to hear it is he's not in a fit of anger or pique. He is just speaking the way that Jerry Jones has learned to speak over 79 years of his life. He's trying to do like some stand-up
Jerry
comedy.
Jones's life is hobnobbing with New York billionaires.
Yes.
That's who these.
And I'm sure he uses this term around them as well.
Yeah, they probably giggle like crazy, right? Yeah.
That's my guess.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We got to move on. Let's talk Elon Musk. I think this is really interesting. So, the Wall Street Journal came out with a story that Elon Musk was having an affair with Sergey Brin's wife, the head of Google, his wife. Well, the wife has now, by the way, Elon came out and said it was ridiculous. He hadn't had sex in ages.
And showed a picture of him and Sergey at a party.
And the journal
and
never
showed a picture of him and Sergey at a party.
And the journal, by the way, cited unnamed sources. Didn't specify that it had gotten the information from anybody.
Weird that they did that story.
Yes.
Weird that
not a typical WSJ story.
No.
Even though it's about Elon Musk, it's a personal story.
Weird that they did it. But now Sergey's wife, they're getting divorced.
Yes.
But his wife has now hired a lawyer, and the lawyer has made sounds that maybe they will sue in this.
Because the wife is categorically denied that she had an affair with Elon Musk.
Used a buzzword, the lawyer.
And the lawyer said that this is defamatory, that this is defamation about and subjects his client to all sorts of bad reputational harm.
So let me ask you a question about that. She's not famous.
Oh, I think she is.
Is she?
I think she is. I think
How?
I think first of all, anytime you
If you marry somebody famous, do you then become famous? By the way, for everybody,
Yes.
so what
Right.
we're talking about is that if she's a public figure, the standard for suing for defamation is much higher.
yes,
Malice.
right. So just to build on
What
that
we
point
saw
for a
in the
second.
Johnny Depp, what we
if
saw
you
in the
say
Johnny Depp case.
If
Yeah.
she's not a public figure, all you have to do is show negligence.
Yeah.
It's a much lower standard that somebody negligently
Yeah.
made a false allegation.
So
So it's relevant.
Just to drive that point home, if I were to say about a non-famous person that they slept with my wife, that person, and assuming it was false, that person could sue me. If I were to say that about a famous person, that person would have to show that I knew that it was false at the time that I said it. That's the distinction between what you say something about a non-famous person and a public
Okay, so
figure.
let's get to
Yes.
whether she's famous or not. Did people before this know her name?
It doesn't matter.
Well, I think it does matter.
She's in a lot of red carpet pictures with
Yes.
Sergey Brin because he's such a public figure. I think it'd be hard to say she is an
Don't you
ordinary
find?
citizen.
Do you find this clear? Because I don't. That somebody.
This-
I'll
yeah.
give you an example. Jessica Alba's husband.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Cash
Warren.
Yeah.
Although Cash is maybe he's a little bit different.
How about Julia Roberts'
I was going to
husband?
say I was just going to do Denny Motor, Julia Roberts' husband.
Public figure.
He
100%
Well,
public
when you
figure.
marry, it's not
When
ju-
you
it's-
marry somebody,
when you
you're a
marry
public
somebody
figure?
that famous. You're a public figure.
I don't know
The
that's
divorce
true.
has been well known. By the way, she only got with him 3 years ago. When he was already a it's not like
No,
she
I know
bought-
he's famous.
It's not like she bought
I get
into
it.
an unknown person.
You think
like-
this is clear? She's a public figure.
Yeah. I think it's very clear
That
she's a
nobody
public
knows who her name. Nobody knows. They couldn't identify
You
her
still
in a
know
li-
Danny Motor's name.
Well, hold on. But her, I couldn't identify her in a lineup. I don't know her name.
Yeah.
The only time I really knew her name, where it came up on my radar, was with the Wall Street Journal.
I think when she chose
she's-
to marry Sergey Brin,
yeah.
she chose to lead a more public
figure.
life.
And she's been a socialite. and she's
So
done
wait a
This is
minute.
that.
someone
So
who
you're
goes
telling
to
me-
like charities, and she's a speaker at charities when there are huge donations.
But does that make them a public figure?
I think it makes them pretty public.
All right,
It's
so-
better
so-
than
Do me a
Sergey's
favor.
definitely not.
Look
but-
me in the eye and say that, because you keep looking down when you're saying that. No, I'm really
Well,
serious.
you're shorter than he is.
Not that much.
I think it's closer. Obviously, Sergey Brin is a more public
sure,
figure,
sure,
but I think when she decided to marry
Yeah.
someone who was so public and lived
right.
the life of a socialite,
So let's break it down into two camps. If she's not a public figure, clearly this is defamatory.
Yep.
And
Well, I mean, they're saying not.
anytime you're besmirching the integrity
Right,
of a
but
person,
again,
based on-
Elon says it's not true.
Yeah,
She
right.
says it's
I'm
not
sorry.
true. Yeah.
Right.
Well, once we assume it's not true, because she said it's not, can she sue for defamation? If she's not declared a public figure, then she has a great case. If she is declared a public figure, she would have to establish, and the burden of proof would be on her, to show that the Wall Street Journal acted with malice or at least reckless disregard for the truth.
And this is where it gets interesting, because, like you said, it's unlike the Wall Street Journal to do a story like
It's
this.
bizarre. And the Wall Street Journal also, because they didn't cite a source, my guess is if they were to go to trial, would not be able to say who their source is at trial. So they're going to get up there and say, we really thought that it was true, but we can't tell you why we thought it was true.
Right.
That's a tough place for the Journal to be in this case. And the allegations made against her are substantial. Like, she has suffered reputational harm because if she's married to one guy and then bangs his best friend, that's a bad look for
but
her.
you got to remember something. The malice would not be toward her. The allegation of malice would be toward Elon, and she was collateral damage.
Yeah.
I think she could make the argument as well. Like
And
it,
it's
it makes
also-
her look like a woman who cheats on
Well,
her
no,
husband.
you're
That's-
missing my
it's a-
point. To prove that if she wants to establish malice, there's no reason the Wall Street Journal
Want
would
to
have a
malign
thing
her.
against her.
Right.
The argument would be they have a thing against Elon,
Yes.
and they brought her in as collateral damage because they thought it would hurt Elon.
At the very least, they would have acted with reckless disregard for the truth, which is sort of the other standard for
I don't know.
Here's
It's
the
interesting.
thing, though. Talk is cheap. She's made the denial. Elon have made the denial publicly. He's now said, her lawyer, Brian Friedman, has said defamatory, said
Yeah.
the buzzword.
Ooh.
It's now a game of chicken. If she doesn't,
Well-
this is out there now. There are a lot of reasons not to sue that are other than the meritorious reasons
Right.
to sue. So I
It's
want to
expensive,
put that
it's
out there.
embarrassing.
Expensive,
Her
it's
sex
embarrassing.
life will be drawn into question. Right.
There are reasons not to sue that don't relate to the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
But it's now out there. Elon and her have denied it. And the Wall Street Journal does have a reputation as a legitimate news outlet. If she
Of course
doesn't
it does,
sue
yeah.
at this point,
Of course it does.
But I think this
That's
is
what I mean.
think
So-
the journal looks very bad right now. Very bad. I think it looks like they, to your point, Harvey, did a story that they didn't have to do and is outside of their typical reporting sort of bailiwick.
But the Journal hasn't blanched yet.
which by the way, will raise eyebrows if
Yes.
this ends up in court.
Right.
Because the question is, why'd you do this story? When have you done a
But
story?
I think the Journal needs to respond. I do. I mean, if
But
they
they're
can't
standing
have
behind their story so far.
Have they come back? But they haven't said anything. They haven't doubled down, right?
They haven't issued a retraction.
No, I agree with that. I agree
Yeah.
with
But they
that.
haven't said
I
anything.
think the burden is now on the Journal to come forward and say, look, they can say
both
what
parties
they
have said no.
Yeah, but they can say what they want, but we know it as a verifiable fact that this happened. Bring it on, Nicole. That's how famous she is.
That's my point. That's my point. Okay, if you're just listening, Jason had to look down and still couldn't figure out her
Oh
last
yeah,
name.
right here.
Everyone knows
No,
Nicole
I don't know.
Shanahan.
It just says Nicole. Oh, Shanahan. Right.
Guys, I don't think it's a clear.
I think the standard for a public figure is gotten lower and lower and lower.
So what-
basically, anybody the public knows, and she's known by some corners.
you
of the
have to
public.
look down and you
I
do
know,
this for
yeah,
a
that's
living.
true.
My
What's the
God.
Journal's move here, though? They're going to respond and stand by the story?
It depends what the facts are. It depends what the facts are.
Well, they ran the story.
Well,
No, no,
Derek,
they have
Derek,
big lawyers
but
at the
no,
Wall
no,
Street
no.
Journal. This isn't a blog.
Okay, here's the thing. What we don't know is this. Did her lawyer send a retraction demand to the Journal?
We don't
Because
know.
if they did, then the clock ticks and then the Journal has to make a decision. Do we do a retraction? Because I think you can minimize damages if you do that within a certain period of time.
I'm asking you,
yeah.
don't you think the Journal, which has a Jason Beckerman, who sits at the Journal and looks at stories, and has a Derek who evaluates stories,
Probably lots of
Who
them.
steals food?
Yeah.
don't you think they
Probably
evaluated
not
this
just a
story? Don't you think they
two-person
reached
team
out?
either.
Yeah, and don't you think they felt? Don't you think they felt
Yeah, which
comfortable?
frightens me now.
I think this. I think the Journal will stand by its reporting.
I think the
really
Journal,
do.
I think right now, depending on what the facts are, depending on who they have, who their source was, is doing a tremendous amount of hand-wringing in a conference room in New York City right now.
Yes.
They are like, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? Did we falsely report this? And Derek, they might be looking for a new lawyer.
Interesting. Ooh.
saying,
I
yeah.
think of how we do these stories.
Oh,
Very
hold on,
responsibly.
hold on.
Are you looking for a
I think you
soft
should
landing for me?
shoot your shot with him, dude.
Nice soft landing at the Journal.
We'll see you Friday.
Bye.